Hello, and welcome to PowerSpeaking Live. I'm Carrie Beckstrom, the host of this monthly series and the CEO of PowerSpeaking Incorporated. Many of you are probably aware that this month, March, is Women's History Month. And this is a time dedicated to reflecting on the many contributions of women who came before us, many that are often overlooked. So I thought it would be really fitting in honor of Women's History Month is to share just a few quotes from the many brave, heroic women who came before us and sacrificed a great deal to push for equality and the advancement of women. So as I read these, if you think you recognize who said this particular quote, I encourage you to put the woman's name in chat. The most difficult thing is the decision to act. The rest is merely tenacity. That came from aviation pioneer Amelia Earhart. You must never be fearful about what you're doing when it is right. Civil rights activist Rosa Parks. If they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. I bet there's someone out there who recognizes who that came from. If you don't have a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. That comes from the first Black woman to be elected to the U.S. Congress in 1968, Shirley Chisholm. My mission in life is not merely to survive, but to thrive, and to do so with some passion, some compassion, some humor, and some style. Maya Angelou, author, poet, and civil rights activist. Last but not least, it took me quite a long time to develop my voice, and now that I have it, I'm not going to be silent. Madeleine Albright, U.S. Secretary of State. I left that one for last because I think it's a perfect segue to today's discussion. Together, we're going to be exploring the various ways in which you can amplify your own voice and empower other women to do the same. And joining us for this discussion are three leaders deeply dedicated to developing and empowering other women to expand their reach and impact. First up, I'd like to introduce one of our clients, Amanda Bailey. Amanda is Vice President of Global Analytics for Activision. Activision is the creator, you see it right behind her, of Call of Duty and many other popular video games. And among Amanda's many gifts is the ability to translate technical work with confidence, clarity, and impact to non-technical audiences, which isn't easy. It takes quite a bit of skill and experience. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you.
Also joining us is another one of our clients, Patricia Cohn. Patricia is the Chief Operating Officer of Pura, a smart fragrance company. And one of Patricia's many talents is that she's a professed, passionate developer of people. Welcome, Patricia.
Thank you, Carrie.
And finally, I'd like to introduce Amy Ferber. Amy Ferber is the lead facilitator for PowerSpeaking. And of the many, many workshops that she delivers to our clients, her personal favorite is our Confident Speaking for Women workshop because it provides women with a safe space to prepare for and practice navigating challenging communication scenarios in the workplace. Welcome, Amy.
Thanks for having me.
All right. And to all of those in our audience, I encourage you to join into the conversation. And if at any point you have a question for our panelists, please put it in chat. Also, if you have your own advice that you would like to share, I encourage you to join the conversation. So, we just heard that Madeline put a lot of time and effort into developing her own voice. Amy, could you build on that by talking a little bit about why effective communication is so essential to advancing the impact of women in the workplace?
Sure. I think that effective communication impacts not only the woman's career, because when you're effective at communicating, you excel farther and faster. Your voice gets into the room more frequently and more and quicker. The second piece is I think it impacts effective communication impacts organizations. So if women within those organizations communicate more effectively, the organization itself then communicates their ideas to the world more effectively. So there's really a benefit for the individual and the organization.
Absolutely. And I also think it's worth noting that developing one's communication, authentic voice, not only has an impact, obviously, within the workplace, but your ability to make an impact within your community, with your own network, with your friends and family. It transcends all aspects of life. So let's build on that. Manda, could you share a personal story where communication played a key role in overcoming a challenge or advancing your career?
Yeah. The thing that comes to mind is I have had an executive supervisor that was quite a talker and had a really bad habit of interjecting when I was speaking or adding to the end of my statements. And while he was supportive of my career and focused on my development, these actions hurt my confidence, they marginalized my leadership presence and my influence. I knew that addressing these instances were essential for my confidence, for my career, and for our relationship. But I also knew it would be a difficult conversation. It would be a crucial conversation. So I planned the conversation well. I planned it as an information and opportunity gathering exercise along with needing to directly and confidently address the negative impacts of the interruptions. I've worked through the conversation. How was I going to do it respectfully but directly? I started with questions. I asked about the interjections. Why did he need to interject? Were there items that I didn't cover or could have covered more clearly? And then I explained the negative impacts of the interjections and asked him to work with me on a better approach. And that conversation went really well. It helped us both. It helped our relationship. We drew up some outcomes. He acknowledged that he really likes to talk and probably does so way too much. And that he would work on that, and he would be open to me pointing out times when he did that. And then we also talked about if there were material points that he felt like needed to be said or could be said clearly, he would direct message me so I could take the leadership role and be the one to address those points. And that was really fruitful, and we continued to slowly build on this, listen to each other's feedback. And it really built my confidence, my leadership presence, our relationship. So that's just one personal story where communication was essential for my career.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. How did you muster the courage to provide the feedback?
I asked, I tried to have an empowering group, kind of a support system, whether it's other female leaders or male peers, that it could sound off with. You get a sense of how they would feel if that happened. Just build my confidence that I wasn't, alone, that I didn't need to suffer with the fool's choice, right? If you've ever read the book Crucial Conversations, where it's either you either ruin a relationship by addressing something, or you sit and suffer in silence. Well, you don't just have two options. You really have a third option. You have the option to be 100% respectful, but 100% on it. And I just looked for people to help me, frame that, frame it as an interrogative, as a information seeking, not just making it all negative, because there was a likely at least one or two reasons why he did that, more than just he likes to talk, which is also arguably true.
Mhm, mhm. Great. Well, bravo to you. That is such a wonderful example. And, to his credit, he was obviously receptive to the feedback, willing to alter his behavior. And I love the agreement that you two came to, that when he had additional points that he felt were critical to add, he private messaged them to you. So you had the opportunity to bring that into the case or whatever it might be. Thank you very much for sharing. Patricia, how about you? Do you have a story?
Well, my story is more around something that's helping you actually get further in your career. When I was at Pura for about 90 days, I was asked to come and present to the board. And I had never presented to a board before, ever in my life. So it's a big opportunity. I really obviously wanted to make a good impression and impress them. And so I was really thoughtful about what I could talk to them about. What would be hot button issues that the board is concerned about? And I really wanted to communicate, obviously, my 90-day assessment of where the supply chain was, what the risks and opportunities were, as well as my vision for the team and how I felt that Pura supply chain could evolve to become a competitive advantage. It was a month or two later when my boss came to me and he said, "Hey, we really think you should join the executive team." And so while I know there were many, many factors that contributed to my ascension to the C suite, I certainly believe that being able to show up in that context with executive presence, strongly, confidently, speaking concisely and thoughtfully certainly helped the case.
Oh, wow. Wow. What concrete evidence that you really had an impact within such a short period of time to be asked to join the team.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Thank you for sharing, and bravo to you for having the courage to do that, because we all know that those kind of high stakes environments can help propel your success, as it did in your case, or it can be really, really damaging and hard to overcome. So I'm glad your outcome was the former. So let's get into some how to's. Amanda, share with us some specific communication techniques women can use to advocate for themselves, whether they're negotiating for a raise, a promotion, or um, any type of situation in the workplace.
Yeah, I'll get into some of the techniques, but even before the techniques, I think a couple of things like recognizing your value, preparing your case, enlisting the support of others are really essential. When it comes to recognizing your value, focus on your contributions, understand your value, your needs, overcome that self-doubt talk, and really lean into the positive talk. And then preparing your case can't be understated. Prepare, gather support and evidence, think about what your desired outcome is. Um, and then enlist the support of others, like I frequently do. Practice your message, get advice, get encouragement, get amplification. When the message comes from other people too, about your readiness, about your accolades, it goes a long way. And then the actual techniques, clear and confident speaking. Amy's a big proponent of that, and that's obviously part of her workshop. Try not to use the qualifying language, and be positive and open and solution focused. I think active listening is a technique that not only helps us understand the message and perspective of others, creating that mutual place of um, you know respect and understanding, but it also helps us make a connection. And that connection, that safe space, creates vulnerability on both parties, and the ability to move things forward. And then be assertive. And I'm not saying be aggressive, and it's not passive, but be able to express your thoughts, your feelings, your boundaries. Do it with respect and with candor. And finding your voice. Your voice isn't like somebody else's. There's, my voice is individual. People on my team, their voices are individual. But recognize you're in the room or the role or the conversation for a reason. It's because your expertise, your experience, your contributions. If you have a question, ask it. Other people likely do, but it guarantees other people are going to benefit from the answer. And that's one thing that a lot of folks just hold back. They're afraid for that vulnerability. So it's just creating that confidence. And I'll kind of leave you with this: like, when it comes to your career or raise, intervene early, take risks, and assume everything is negotiable.
Wow. I like that. Assume everything is negotiable. I just have to share a super, super quick story. I got my first job offer while I was still in school. I was in the spring semester of my senior year. And my parents had given to me as a graduation gift a trip to Europe. And I had a complete trip planned with 3 girlfriends. My very first passport, it was going to be my first time out of the country. I already had my plane ticket, and I was given this job offer that conflicted with the time in which I was going to be in Europe. And at the time, it was completely black and white to me. I have a choice. I either go on this trip and decline this offer, or I take this offer. Seriously, that's I only saw it as 2 options. And of course, being the dutiful person that I am, I ended up not going on the trip and took the job. And then years later, I thought, oh my gosh, I could have negotiated the start date, and I probably would have been respected for doing so. So thank you. Thank you very much for sharing that. Amy, and also Amanda, I really appreciated that you started out by talking about the importance of, first and foremost, really being clear on your own value, because that is so essential to projecting confidence and having the courage to speak up with respect and authority, like you talked about. Amy, can you share just a few techniques that we cover in our confident speaking workshop on this concept of on ramps? If it's a challenge for certain women or people in general to contribute in meetings when there's a lot of big personalities, what recommendations do you have?
Yeah, and to that point, and to something that Amanda brought up, I think it ties in, which is there is no amount of practice that is wasted. So, and when I say that, I mean practice out loud. Often when I'm coaching women, they say, "Oh yeah, no, I practice." And I say, "What does that look like?" And they say, "Well, I pull up the PowerPoint on my laptop and I click through the slides and I run through exactly what I'm going to say." But the next question is, do you say it out loud? And usually the answer is no, I practice in my head. And there is a big shift that happens when you say things out loud from when you just practice how it's going to run potentially once it goes through your mouth. And it is always different. So everything in terms of communication when you're trying to get better, you need to practice it out loud. So the on-ramping piece that Carrie just mentioned is really how can you get your voice into the room? Well, you're not going to be able to do that very well if you haven't tried it. And that might actually end up being you ask a couple of colleagues to have a conversation about anything. And then your ability to try and jump into that conversation. We use the word on-ramps because if you think of a freeway, you're not going to go onto the freeway going 20 miles an hour, right? You have to just jump in and say, Amanda, I agree. And this is another piece that I'd like to add. Or, Amanda, I actually have a different perspective. So whoever was just talking, that's a quick way for you to connect and drive onto that freeway at 65. And this is the moment where you really have to have tried it out and then just do it. You go into the meeting and you tell yourself, and this is my own personal take on this idea, which is you just rip the Band-Aid. You have to do it. Because if you don't, someone else will speak for you.
Excellent, excellent. And I have found, and I venture to guess this is true of many people, that the longer you go in a meeting silent, the more difficult it becomes because you're in your head and you're feeling like, okay, 30 minutes have gone by and I haven't contributed a thing to this conversation. So it better be really, really good. I mean, you know what I mean? You start to put even more pressure on yourself, and the likelihood that you're going to do it becomes less and less and less. So I love the concept of just do it. And who's felt like they said something kind of non-value in a meeting, or maybe regretted something they said? Anyone here? I mean, I certainly have. It doesn't stop me from doing it. My goodness. I think, Mandy, you might have said this. Communication is not about perfection. It's about connection. That's the goal. We're trying to make a connection and together make an impact. Okay. Amanda, would you share one communication habit you've developed that's made a significant impact on your confidence in leadership presence?
Yeah, I'll piggyback kind of on top of the story that I gave earlier, and really standing your ground and addressing issues candidly and respectfully, whether they're interruptions, interjections, idea poaching, marginalizations, somebody being dismissive. You have a right and arguably an obligation to stand up for yourself and make it known how that felt and why it was damaging. So that if somebody's doing that to you, they're doing it to others. And so there's a benefit in addressing this, not only for you, but for them and for other team members. And, like I mentioned, you can do it with candor and honesty and respect when you find that mutual place of understanding, that mutual purpose. And, back to that fool's choice, you have to get past that debilitating two choice option that isn't helpful, and really get to that third better option of being honest and respectful.
Thank you. Thank you. And I like the fact that you continue to talk about the importance of candor. More than ever, people are craving transparency in the workplace. We owe it to each other to be candor with respect. And as you say, you're not only helping yourself and standing up for yourself, you're contributing to the type of culture that you want to cultivate within the organization. Amy, what about you? What's a specific habit that has been particularly useful to
Yeah,
you?
mine is a little bit different, but it relates. And that is thinking about if someone you respect invites you to do something that feels scary, like give a presentation or
Or in
go to
Patricia's case, presenting to the board after
exactly.
on the job for
Oh my
90
God.
days. And by
Yeah.
the way, she's never done that before.
Exactly. Or going to a conference and leading a workshop, which is the example that I'm going to give. Um, After the pandemic, I was invited to lead a workshop at the Women in Tech conference, and I'll be honest, it was the first time I was going to be teaching again in person, in a long time, like a couple years. And on the plane, on the way there, I was like, what if I don't remember how to do this in person? And I did, thank God. But I also did a couple of things in order to prepare for that, which was, and this relates to something Amanda said, I went to a couple of people that got my head straight again and said, Amy, you do know how to do this. You've done this a million times. And by the end of the workshop, I left there practically skipping out of the room because it was so fun and energizing. But if I had said no because I was nervous, I would never have had that amazing experience. I could still feel it in my body right now, like just remembering and thinking back to how fun that was. So I think it really comes back to when there's someone that asks you to do something that feels a little bit risky, but within your general area of expertise, say yes. There's huge benefit there.
Terrific. Terrific. Suzanne definitely agrees with that comment, Amy. And oh, goodness, you said something. Oh, well, what you're underscoring, and I tell my son this all the time, the greatest accomplishments and fulfillment come in life when you stretch yourself outside of that comfort zone to just be willing to take that risk.
Mm.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Patricia, can you talk to us about the power of storytelling? How can that be used as a tool to lift others up and create a culture of sponsorship within an organization?
I think that there is something really, really powerful about connection, community, vulnerability, and shared experiences. And I think as women, we are sometimes very susceptible to projecting a lot of things onto other people. She looks like she has it all together. She's the perfect mother. She never gets flustered under pressure. And the truth of the matter is that everybody is human. Everybody has things they're struggling with and that they're insecure about. And I think it's so important for leaders, particularly women leaders, to demystify the leadership journey and to talk about failures, to talk about experiences that were incredible and workplace experiences that are a little bit suboptimal so that people can understand what the journey really looks like and that it's not a straight line and it's not always so smooth. I was in a workshop recently and a team member was sharing her experience of being exceptionally bright, of skipping grades in school, of being just a really smart person and getting a lot of feedback that she was too confident and that she was intimidating to other people. And on a personal level, she was having challenges finding partners who were not overwhelmed by how awesome she was. And those experiences and that feedback then was causing her to want to make herself smaller and to be like more accommodating in situations where she's kind of giving her power away. And so I really took that as an opportunity to say, hey, I can relate to a lot of the experiences that you are talking about. I do not have a magic bullet for how to kind of diffuse some of those things, but I would love to talk to you about different strategies that I have used to try to navigate waters that are a little bit tricky in this way.
I wrote something down that you said because I love it so much. You can use storytelling to demystify the leadership journey. Yeah, completely. And Amy referenced the Women in Technology conferences that we both have had the honor of participating in for, gosh, going on 4 years now. And I can say without exception, the keynotes that tend to be the most inspirational and valuable to the women in the audience are ones in which, especially senior level leaders that a lot of these younger women really look up to and aspire to, share with a lot of vulnerability their career journey, which definitely always includes some failures or some setbacks and how they overcome it. It's very, very inspiring to be able to hear those stories and know that we all suffer from struggles, from a lack of confidence, etc. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Amy, aside from bringing our own folding chair, do you have suggestions on how women can get a seat at the table?
Yeah. I think there's a couple of things. One is from leaders to start observing the women within your organization, especially women who are newer to the organization or just starting out in their career, and invite them. Invite them to the table and tell them why they are valuable to the conversation. Because I think this kind of goes to what we've been hearing a little bit, which is we can get insecure, especially at the beginning of your career. You may not realize that what you have and your limited career experience is actually valuable to the organization. So having a leader come to you and say, you know what, you have a new, fresh perspective, and we want to hear that. So I think inviting them, telling them why they deserve to be there, but then also teeing them up for the meeting, because I think it's one thing to feel invited, but then to sit there and go, wow, I didn't know we were going to be talking about this. So if you do invite someone, tee them up to what the conversation is really going to be about so that they can have a little bit of time to think and prepare so that they can bring more value to the conversation itself.
Terrific. Terrific. And if you are invited, own the space. Walk in with confidence. Own the space around you. Don't try to get small. I cringe when I think back. This was when I was in my 30s and I was relatively new to this organization. And I still remember it was on the second floor. It was this massive executive conference room that had floor to ceiling windows. And there was that big conference table with, were they called Polycom phones? Remember those? Look kind of like spaceships along the table. And then uh, along the glass and the walls were additional chairs. And I would come into the room and there would be many empty seats around the table, and I would sit at one of the chairs along the wall. Don't do that. Don't do that. You're invited for a reason. Sit at that main table. Own the space. You're there for a reason. Okay. Patricia, what advice would you give young women entering the workforce about communicating their ideas and values with confidence?
Well, I think this has been touched on a bit, but to me, you must practice and prepare. It is a rare skill set and it is a rare person who can go into a room and speak thoughtfully and concisely and confidently, extemporaneously. Most people cannot do that. And so you really want to think about who is going to be in the room, who is the audience, what do they care about, anticipate responses, anticipate questions, and then be prepared. Answer the question before it's even been asked. I always am trying to coach my team on that strategy so that you don't even need to leave room for a question because you've been so comprehensive in the content that you put together. Amy touched on this a little bit, but when you're practicing, you can also voice record yourself. What does it sound like? Do you see yourself doing any tics that you want to try to work on? That can be a very effective way to know how you're going to come across in the room. So do not wing it. Practice and prepare.
Absolutely. There's a lot of head nodding here. Lots of head nodding. Amy, what would you add?
I think the biggest things are finding a mentor and finding a reciprocity partner. Now, the reciprocity partner is something I made up in my head, but I'll explain that. You can probably guess what it is. But the mentor, I was intimidated by the word mentor early in my career, kind of still am, I guess. But what I have come to realize is that there were always women in my path who were my mentors. We just never had that exchange of words and roles. The very first 2 jobs that I got after grad school were because of 2 different mentors from my graduate program who helped me get those jobs. And at the time, I thought, "God, they're so generous. I mean, this is just above and beyond." I mean, I thought, "God." And now, much farther into my career, I realize I get to be that person. And it's amazing. When you have someone that you can see that has potential or has something, to be a part of their future success is such a good feeling. And the other piece is having a reciprocity partner, which is something I have used more probably in the last decade of my career, which is as I've done things on my own more often and not been a part of a team, I needed to find somebody or people that I could coach me and I could coach them and feel like we had more or less remote colleagues. And so I actually have a couple of those people, and we met during the pandemic once a week and would encourage each other and ask where we're at and continue to really build that confidence. And now we don't meet as often, but we definitely have those check-in times that I think really continues to build our confidence in the path that we're on.
Love, love the concept of a reciprocity partner. We talk a lot about mentors and sponsors. That's a critical one as well. I love that. And it's interesting. Just yesterday, I was at a workshop, and one of the things we were encouraged to do is reflect on the the work that we do that just completely drains us. We kind of dread doing. It definitely is not playing to our strengths, or really fills us up, and then the work we do that just completely is in our sweet spot. And mentoring others was one of the things I wrote down. Amy, you're right.
Mm.
It's incredibly fulfilling and rewarding to be able to help others who have potential do even greater things. So oh, and also just really quickly, you brought up an excellent point, Patricia, in that uh in a like a meeting setting, being able to convey your point concisely and in a compelling way, spontaneously, can be extra difficult, sometimes more difficult than preparing for a more formal presentation, because you have the benefit of all that preparation time. Uh, Amy, could you just talk briefly? So, my point is, for those that especially struggle with that and want to develop more, having a framework in your back pocket can be really helpful to be able to kind of structure your point on the spot. Amy, can you talk very, very briefly about a framework we recommend?
Sure.
And I want to hear from you, Amanda.
So the framework that we teach in many of our, well, in our Confident Speaking for Women class is PrEP, which is share your position, then share the reason you say that, one quick example, and then your position again. And what's great about that structure is if you tend to be a person who is not very concise, it helps you be more concise because there's like bookends on the end of both pieces of your answer. And the more that you do it, the more that you use PrEP, the easier it becomes. So you could practice this in your everyday life. If someone asked you, what should we have for dinner, burritos or pizza? And you could answer, I think we should have burritos, and then go through the PrEP model just in casual conversation so that when you're in the meeting in your organization, you can respond with that same level of structure and not having had to have planned it out as much.
Terrific. Terrific. And Dorothy contributed to the conversation. She said, yes, my mentors in our organization have been so crucial to both my professional and personal growth and confidence. Terrific, Dorothy. And others, again, if you have any questions for our panelists, please jump in. Mary McGlynn, I'm really interested in the question Malia posed about navigating one's career in these turbulent political times, example, hostility towards DEI. Thank you, Mary, for pointing that out. And I am so sorry that I missed that question. So let me repeat that one more time. Any advice on navigating one's careers in these turbulent political times? particularly where there's. Thank you.
I can hit that one as we talk about like how leaders and organizations can foster, environments where women feel safe and encouraged.
Go for it.
So if your organization is open to or has, a women's employee network, that's a great first step. If you're an organization that's cutting back on its official positions in DE&I, you can influence that from wherever you are in your organization, within your team, with your leaders, finding other female leaders, and have happy hours, lean in circles, try to do special speaker events, opportunities to connect with other women, and find mentors, to Amy's point. You know, bring in development and skills workshops. I don't depend on our I don't depend on our organization. We just had Amy come in and do confident speaking for women workshop, and work on encouraging the recruitment and retention of women. It can mean something different. It can mean making sure the pipeline is full when you're going through trying to find the best candidate. Mentorship, leadership development. We often need a little bit more encouragement, a clearer path, like really identifying the opportunities for us. And I really think, promoting an inclusive culture is so paramount. I, again, don't depend on the Women Employees Network. I do this within our organization, and I launched what we call inclusivity chats. And I ask other leaders, men and women within the organization, to lead these conversations, whether it's about a safe space, crucial conversations, what allyship really looks like, what inclusive language looks like, how to have engagement focused meeting management. So all the voices are heard, people aren't shut down, that it's really respectful. And I think that you can't underestimate the importance of employee surveys and taking actions on those surveys. All of those things don't need the organization to lead it. We can lead it from within.
Cool. Wonderful points, Amanda. Wonderful. Anything, Patricia or Amy, that you'd like to add?
I would just piggyback on what Amanda's saying, that for me, I have a lot of friends who are very liberal, dominant culture friends who are very liberal, and they have been quite dispirited by some changes that are happening, within our nation. And for me, I'm just like, gals, just get to work. Like, people who are in communities of color, this is not new for us. And so I think you just go back to grassroots. You don't need necessarily to have things be so structured. All you need is vision and leadership. And you might have to be the person who is the leader in this area. I think we've already touched on mentorship, which I think is so valuable. I have people who mentor me and I mentor other people, and it is a circle. And so you can still make a way even when it feels like there's no way.
Oh, so well said, Patricia. It's so interesting. And I shared this with Amy in advance of getting on this event. Very often, I kick off the topic by sharing some research or statistics that substantiate the importance of the topic and, focusing on the development or what might be. And preparing for this, I started to, look up some research that from McKinsey, for instance, that substantiates the fact that there's still significant disparity in the workplace. And I thought, that's not how I want to lead off this conversation. We're very, very aware that we've got some challenges and some difficult barriers in front of us. I want instead to spend some time reflecting on the brave women who came before us and sacrificed so much in the spirit of progress. So I agree with you wholeheartedly, Patricia. This isn't a time to be disheartened. It's a time to stand up and continue to forge ahead. And Amanda, thank you for all your recommendations on the subject of, and thank you so much for the question, Malia. On the subject of barriers that women face in the workplace, can you break them down for us, Patricia? And what advice do you have?
I think that broadly speaking, women will tend to display certain kinds of behaviors in the workforce that are oriented towards cooperation, collaboration, accommodation, deference. We want to make people comfortable. And in certain cultural work environments, that is very effective. If it's a very collaborative work environment, that can be very effective behaviors for getting ahead. And also, when women do find ourselves in a more aggressive or confrontational environment, we might want to withdraw when in fact we need to be able to meet the energy of the room and be a little bit more assertive, right? And then, in being more assertive, sometimes a woman gets characterized as being arrogant or domineering when those same kinds of assertive and confident qualities are celebrated in a man. So it is a really difficult tightrope to walk. It's infuriating, it's frustrating. And so for me, women need to have a whole toolkit of resources upon which to draw. In a situation like that, you actually might need a male ally in the room who can help you navigate a tense and confrontational environment so that you don't have to become this woman who's being portrayed as being overbearing and all these kinds of traits. And so you have to figure out in your toolkit, is it a hammer? Is it a level? Is it a screwdriver? What is the right communication strategy for this scenario for me to be effective? And how can I emerge from this still in my power and being able to hold my own, regardless of what the environment is?
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, I love this concept of having an arsenal. Maybe not the best word when we're trying to distinguish between assertive versus aggressive, but a whole number of tools at your disposal depending on the type of situation. And the more you practice and have experience leaning into those tools, the more effective you're going to be in judging what's the right move in this particular situation. Thank you.
And
Excellent.
knowing all the players and how they might react depending, so reading that as well.
Exactly. Yeah. Knowing your audience, knowing the players, and then acting accordingly. And thank you, Heather. I couldn't agree more. She said, we're so glad to have you back, Patricia. Amanda, I'd love to hear from you as a woman in STEM. I know you have a lot of experience working in very male dominated cultures and environments. Can you talk a little bit about effective ways women can use communication to challenge biases and drive change in those types of environments?
Yeah, definitely. Of analytics and data science is historically male, and the video game industry still is. So, some of the ways to kind of challenge bias and champion change, I think it starts with building empathy and understanding, both teaching and learning about others, their feelings, their experiences, their struggles, their goals, asking questions and encouraging questions to be asked because we're not all alike. I don't care if we're the same gender or the same color from the same hometown. And we have to learn to listen, to understand without judgment, and really to kind of find that place where each other are coming from. I also think finding an empowerment group, getting that amplification, a champion, somebody to sponsor, mentor you, like we spoke. And then I also think encouraging the use of inclusive language in communications and interactions, understanding what that means, helping others understand what that means, really can help us, kind of drive the change.
Such great points, Amanda. And when you talk about using inclusive language, we're talking about everything. We're talking about being really, really mindful of the language that you use in a job posting and not unintentionally having it lean in one direction. So the written communication, the verbal communication, All of it. All of it. Great. Terrific. Well, I'd love to close by giving each of you an opportunity to share your parting advice. Leave this wonderful audience with one communication strategy that will help them step into their power. So let's kick off with you, Amy.
One is very hard, but I will do my best. And that is, if you're invited to a meeting, know that your voice matters and you should speak.
Okay. Okay. Know your voice matters and you should speak. Great. Patricia?
Internally, how we speak to ourselves really matters. And as much as possible, I would encourage women to silence the negative self talk that is constantly going on in our heads. We need to be our own best cheerleaders. And so, as something that I practice for myself, when I have a big meeting, I try to find the power speaking, power pose. I think that's very helpful. Deep breathing, and then music. I like use music to channel my own inner warrior. So that really helps me get out of any negative self-talk and just get into the zone.
Ooh, I love that. Using music to channel your inner warrior. Thank you. Amanda.
I'm going to second both what Amy and Patricia said. And then what I'll leave you with is, a way to help you champion through that fool's choice so that you can be 100% honest and 100% respectful is focusing on the issue and not the person.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, and that's so key to applying a lot of what you've talked about, Amanda, such as leading with empathy, seeking to understand, approaching a conversation as an information exchange and not a judgment call or an attack. Thank you. Thank you. Such sage advice. I see Andrew has put in. There we go. How to close on a strong professional note. Oh, wonderful. Please take a look at the comments we're getting. Love that you ended in these compelling quotes from Patricia, Amanda, and Amy. So many golden nuggets here, and thank you all so much. Oh, this has just been terrific, and thank you for your feedback, Suzanne. The other thing I will just share, it's been referenced many times. If you're seeking an opportunity to provide development on this topic and support our Confident Speaking for Workshop, Confidence Speaking for Women.
There you go.
Wow, talk about going downhill at the close. Confident Speaking for Women workshop is a great tool for that. So thank you. We will be following this up with a blog. So all these golden nuggets will be shared along with many more. Patricia, Amanda, Amy, thank you so much for your time and sharing all these great insights. I am going to close by giving a preview of what we will be discussing next month. I am going to be sharing insights that have been gathered through the most recent round of executive interviews we did with executives around the globe on what it takes to be effective in that type of environment. So I hope you can join us next month for that really, really rich conversation. Thank you to the audience. You were terrific.